When it comes to what Bachmann is left to make, they're incredibly limited. Though fans have been ranting and raving for characters like Stepney, Boko, and Duke to return for years at this point, simply put, their deal with Mattel doesn't allow for this. As Doug Blaine has said himself, every new character released needs to be relevant in the more recent seasons, alongside being recognizable to parents and children. That way, it's ensured their models sell well. Even though we fans absolutely love someone like Arthur, a parent who has to sit through the show with their kid won't recognize who he is. For this very reason, Bachmann has been restricted to exclusively making CGI series characters since the mid-2010s, with their last model era release being Donald and Douglas in 2011. With all this in mind, let's take a look at all the CGI characters I want Bachmann to put out in the near future. At number 7, we have Hiro. When it comes to being relevant and recognizable, Hiro is a prime example. Not only was he the spectacle of Thomas's CGI debut, but he also stuck around until the very end, filling out the entire CGI catalog with numerous Spotlight episodes and appearances. Mind you, Spotlight appearances that define the CGI era as a show and are universally loved, like the episode Henry's Hero. On top of this, he's generally well-liked and popular with most fans due to his personality and design, in contrast to characters like the Logging Locos. When taken into consideration, it's pretty clear that Hiro could fly off shelves if it's ever decided Bachmann wants to release him. However, at the very moment, they are leaving a significant chunk of money on the table. At number 6, we have Duncan. While the CGI rendition isn't the most popular, being hideously out of proportion to his basis and original model prop, you can't deny without him the narrow gauge fleet feels really empty. The whole point behind the livery of the narrow gauge engines, at least in the TV series, is that they create an entire rainbow when put together. If you're missing one of the 3 primary colors, it'll just look wrong. Also, I know I'm in the minority when I say this, but I genuinely don't mind how Duncan looked during the Brenner era since he's written so well. Therefore, it's really easy for me to look past his appearance. I definitely think he's in the cards considering Bachmann is incredibly fixated on N-scale right now, so getting him at the moment is likely just a matter of playing the waiting game. Now, for the 5th entry on this list, I decided to group a ton of engines together. And before we complain about how that doesn't make sense, just hear me out. So we all know Bachmann has dipped their toes into variants before, like when they released a Red Rosie or Busy Bee James. Well, I propose we could get even more than this. Not to mention, the variants I want to release are nothing more than simple repaints that'll cost peanuts to manufacture. For starters, I think a CGI era Bill and Ben updated to have red wheels and one twin in a blue livery could be more than interesting. Since Mattel's main goal with Bachmann is for them to release predominantly recent characters, it makes sense for them to eliminate their Bill and Ben based off the model series in favor for ones based off the Brenner era. Another variant I'd love to see would be a glow-in-the-dark Henry. It'll definitely be complicated getting the go-ahead to release him because while that episode is recent, it's also fairly obscure. However, since it'll cost close to nothing to make these liveries, I'd love to see Bachmann take a crack at it. At number 4, we have Harvey. As a character, he isn't a blank slate whose sole purpose is toy sales, much like Bo, a character Bachmann has made before. In terms of his character, he works really well as a foil to Cranky. Cranky hates engines because he's nothing like them and will never see things on their level. Harvey tries his best to have a good relationship with everyone and is an engine himself, meaning he can see eye to eye with them and is usually there at their most vulnerable. That's his job, after all. On top of just being a good character, he's also very relevant to the show, making frequent appearances during the Brenner era and even throughout Bubba, so he'd definitely be relevant to all buyers. He genuinely looks really good too, so on a layout, he'd pop. Now, as for how Bachmann would tackle his crane arm, that's a pretty gray area. His basis has been tackled in 00 gauge before, however, his crane arm is so much more chunkier than that. Not to mention, it swivels in every direction, unlike his basis. Those are really the only problems you can encounter when it comes to adapting this model though, so I'd really love to see him. At number 3, this is something we've unanimously asked for as a fandom: CGI revamps of the main 8. If I were to go into detail on why I'd really like to see this happen, it'd just be beating a dead horse into the ground. So I'll make things short and sweet. I get that these engines are meant for really young kids getting into the hobby. However, if you're going to show up with the audacity to charge $121 for your most simple engine, then it's your duty to also improve them accordingly. It's pure corporate greed on your hand. Do the right thing and fix your 22-year-old models. I've always believed Hornby to be a lazy company, and even they revamped their models at some point. At number 2, we have the only non-rail entry on this list, Bulgy. Being introduced in the 3rd season, he's a really fun character, being he has a very strained relationship with every engine on the island.
Bah! Enjoyment is all you engines live for. One day railways will be ripped up.
Considering Bachmann's been more focused with releasing big world, big adventurous characters as of recent, I feel Bulgy is completely in the realm of possibility. You know, because he was reintroduced to this era of the show in specific, a very significant character at that. Another reason Bulgy could work in this line would be the fact that he's quote-unquote inexpensive to produce, being there is no need to account for any pricey internals like the engines. Besides, who doesn't love him? Adults and kids alike recognize who he is. I am more than confident that if they were to ever put out a Bulgy and Bachmann, he would fly off the shelves. We've come a long way by this point, with now only one more entry to cover. To build momentum, let's cover an honorable mention before getting to the highly anticipated final entry. At number 1.5, if you could even call it that, I would really love it if Bachmann would re-release Spencer. I've had my eye on this model for quite some time now, and as appealing as it looks, I feel it could use one simple change. One change that would bring its appearance to an unparalleled level. See, there's a major gripe that I have with this engine, and it's the fact that his body is composed of this really cheap looking plastic. If I'm gonna pay nearly $150 for this release, then I shouldn't be getting something that looks like his $20 Playrail model. Therefore, I believe Bachmann should come out with a silver Spencer. Brendan Reese 10 has done this in the past without altering anything else, and his engine genuinely looks like something straight out of the hit era. There is a lot of money being left on the table by not making this one simple modification, and I feel Bachmann would flourish if they did. Here we are at number 1, the single engine on this list that I wouldn't just want to own but would also cherish dearly if it ever came out. Of course, I'm talking about the Flying Scotsman. While it's definitely true his CGI render might not be the most favored by fans, I personally don't really see anything that bad with it. It's definitely true that his face is really chunky, his smoke deflectors are an unnecessary addition that don't look good, and the lining on his tender not matching up is somewhat of an eyesore. Scratch that, it's more of an eye bleed. Look, I admit it doesn't look the best, but hear me out. However, as far as these issues go, the rest of his model looks really good. Considering the way he looks as a capsule and in his motorized release, it doesn't feel like if he were to come out in HO form, he'd be downright ugly. As far as merch goes, he's actually pretty successful. Not to mention, he's a very significant addition to Bubba, a clear indicator he's a relevant character that could be easily recognized by kids, parents, and adult fans. The only issues I could see Bachmann running into in terms of trying to release this model would be having to pay royalties to the National Railway Museum of York and making him worth an exorbitant amount due to the fact that he has 2 tenders. Theoretically, he could even go for upwards of $200 if he's ever released. And just knowing how greedy and shameless of a company Bachmann can be at times, that's completely in the realm of possibility. I still love him though, of course. Now, let's talk about how Bachmann would even package this item, because he has 2 tenders. something no other release before him has ever done. He'd be much too long to have on store pegs in the usual blister, so would he be some kind of online exclusive, or packaged like a full set, but without the track, a transformer, and instructions, just so he could fit somewhere? In all, it's a really complicated thought in terms of how you even adapt this guy, but a really nice concept when it comes to just thinking about an HO Flying Scotsman existing. This marks the very end of my ranking, something that was a little difficult yet all the more fun to release. The month of January is very hectic for me, considering I have midterms to focus on all throughout it, and it largely disrupts my flow of content as a result. Though my plan for 2025 is to release at least 2 long-form videos like this one every month, I'm still a student at the end of the day, meaning it's my first priority to put work at the top of my to-do list. Chances are I'll do the same thing during the month of June as a result of finals, however, the year has only just began. Therefore, I'm inviting you to join me on this journey by doing 2 simple things: liking the video and subscribing. And I'll see you all next time.